Hello everybody, what fun times we are having. I've never used so much tech in all my life. I just got a new tablet, came through the door this morning, but I've reverted back to my phone because I kind of know where I am with my phone. Anyway, I brought with me my lucky owl feather that I found on a walk in the Suffolk countryside. And I also brought with me my lucky deer antler that I also found on the same walk. And on that day, I also found a hare, but sadly it was no longer with us, so to speak. So 3 kind of totem things in one day was, as someone said, a real blessing. Anyway, I want to say thank you to Nick Garner for once again pulling the hat out of the bag to create this isolation festival. I know he has a backing of quite a few friends that help him, but he has this ability to just pull things out of the bag and just produce wonderful stuff for people to listen to. And I thank him dearly for inviting me along to tell you a story, which I will get on with in a moment. I just want to give another nod to the National Emergencies Trust. They're going to be doing a very big job over the next few weeks and months to help out people in real dire crisis. And that kind of takes me kind of to my story. Long, long ago, in a far, far, far away land, there was an old lady, and she lived in a little wooden shack on the edge of a wood. She had long, grey, dusty hair, yellowing fingernails like talons, but she had a twinkle in her eye that was kind and good. Now, she lived alone, and she was poor. It was one winter. She had run out of food, and well, in those days, you didn't have a supermarket to go to get your food, and I'm not sure it'd be much good if they had under this present climate. But anyway, she had nothing to eat. So she thought, well, I will go and forage in the wood. Off she went. She put on a little cape and her little boots, and she picked up her wicker basket, and she went out into that beautiful wood. And as she walked, she could hear what birds still stay around in the winter. Often the robin is still around. She could hear the robin chirping away. She could hear the wren chirping away, also hidden away in those little bushes, that tiny little bird that seems to hang around as much as the robin in the winter. That's my experience. And she was listening to that bird song, and she was looking, well, there wasn't much to find. She went to an old apple tree that she knew. But sadly, all the apples had been picked. There was one on the floor. It was a bit mouldy, a bit maggoty, but she picked it up and put it in her basket, and she thought there'll be a little bit of something good in that. And on she walked through the wood. She found a few cobnuts laying on the floor. The mice and the squirrels had had most of them, but she found a couple, and she thought, they'll do. And she looked around and she looked around. There was very little to find. She knew a place where there were mushrooms that would grow, but it was so late in the season. But she found a couple of mushrooms that were well past their best, but she thought, beggars can't be choosers. And she picked those up and she put those in her basket too. And she was rummaging around, and she noticed something on the floor, and she got down and she brushed away the leaves, and she picked it up and she looked at it and she thought, is it? She brushed the dust off and the dirt and the bits of twigs, and it is, she thought. It's a hairy toe. I wonder what it tastes like, she thought. And she oh, it's got a taste of cheese, and it's a little bit meaty, and that'll do, she thought. And she put that in her basket too. And she hobbled her way back home. Well, when she got home, she lit the fire. She got out her big black cauldron. She filled it with a little bit of water, and she put those ingredients into that cauldron. And she got her wooden spoon and she began to stir and stir. And if there's any children watching, I don't mind how old you are as a child. You can be 103 if you're childish. That's really, really good. I want you to imagine stirring that pot, stirring that pot. Well, all good cooks taste before they eat. So she got her other spoon and she put it in there and she had a little... Something's missing, she thought. Salt. She went over to her little cupboard. She opened the doors and she had a look. And all there was a little bit, speckles of where there'd been salt, just a little few dustings of salt and a few mouse droppings and a dead earwig. And she scooped it all into her hand and she thought, well, I better sort that out. And then she thought, well, I'm hungry. So she put it all into the pot. And she picked up that big wooden spoon, gather your spoons, and she began to stir and stir and stir again. And she had another little taste. Need something else. Pepper, she thought. She went back to her cupboard. She got out her little stool and put her little stool down, for the next shelf was taller than her. And she climbed up on that stool and she looked above the shelf. And all that she could see was some pepper dust and some more mouse droppings and a dead spider. Well, she scooped all of that into her little hands. She stepped down off the stool and she went across to that cook pot and she thought, I'll eat it all. And she put it all into the pot. And she continued to stir and stir and stir and stir until it was ready. Oh, she couldn't wait to eat this. She thought, oh, this is going to be so it smells beautiful, she thought. And she got her big wooden bowl and she put it all in there and she sat down in her chair and she began to eat. Oh, I've got a couple of friends waving. Hello, Grace and Alison. Hello, Lynn. I don't know about you people. When I eat, I always save the best bit till last. I know some of you eat the best bit first, and I normally ask the audience to put their hands up. Could you put your hands up if you eat the best bit till last? Yep. Yeah. Well, that's the normal reaction. Most people put their hands up. They eat the best bit till last. Well, this old lady was just like you. She saved that hairy toe till last. And she took that hairy toe out with her spoon and she thought, oh, this is going to be so good. And just as she was about to eat it, she noticed there was lots of dirt underneath the toenail of the toe, and she thought, And she got a long yellowing talon of a nail and she scraped it all out and oh, it was so mature and delicious. And then she popped that toe in her mouth as quick as she could. She crunched on that bone and those hot juices just burst and hit the sides of her mouth and they began to slide down her throat. And she... Delicious, she thought. Oh, that was such a lovely meal. She took herself to her rocking chair. She lit a little candle. She got her book and she just sat there, rocking. After that beautiful meal that she'd just made herself, she thought, oh, that was delicious. Keep me going till the morning at least, she thought. And she began to feel a bit tired. She thought, oh, it's time for bed. And she put her book down, blew out the candle, and she took herself up the apples and pears stairs. And she laid in bed and she pulled the covers up, and before long she was fast asleep. She was woken about an hour later with a noise. She could hear a whoosh as the wind blew. There was a storm coming in. She could begin to hear the branches clittering and a clattering, whoosh, clitter, clatter, clitter, clatter. She thought, oh, it's a bit of a windy, cold night out there. And she snuggled up some more into her blankets and she went back to sleep. Well, a bit later, she wasn't sure how much later, she was woken again with a noise. And the wind was whoosh, 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 and the branches were clittering and clattering even more, and there was a hewly blowing out there, and she thought, oh, there's a real storm coming in, there's a real storm coming in, and she tucked herself right up, snuggled in, and she fell asleep once again. Then she was woken. She heard a noise that she'd never heard before. She listened, and she couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was a voice, and it said, "Where's my hairy toe?" Ah, she thought, oh no. And these began to knock. Oh, where's my hairy toe? Oh my golly gosh. She thought, oh. She put the blanket over her head. Oh. But she could hear the voice coming closer and closer. Where's my hairy toe? Well, whatever it was, don't worry, children. Whatever it was, it got to the front door. Well, it didn't knock politely like the average person would. It just burst the door open and it stepped inside and it said, "Where's my hairy toe?" And it began to walk up the stairs. It got to the top of the stairs and it opened her bedroom door. And it stepped inside and it walked up to the end of her bed and it said, "Where is my hairy toe?" And she was lying there. She thought, oh no. Where is my hairy toe? And she looked down. I've eaten it. It was lovely. It was delicious. Well, the next morning. Well, the villagers always visited her. The next morning they came to see how she was, to see if she wanted some bread or some milk or just some help with something. She was nowhere to be found. They saw a footprint right in front of the door in the mud. And I don't know if you can count. My score wasn't so good. I'm not so good at maths. But can you help me count the toes? Because the villagers counted the toes. It went a bit like this. It went 1, 2, 3, 4. And the fifth toe was missing. Now, you're probably wondering that something terrible happened to the old lady at this stage. But this is the good news. Rumour has it that she eloped with whoever it was who visited her that evening, and they went off somewhere else, the other side of the mountain or something, and they lived very happily as a couple, an odd couple, but they lived very, very happily. And they also say that should you find yourself in that faraway place from long, long ago, well, there's nothing there apart from a beautiful oaken woodland with wildflowers, and it's full of beautiful animals. And that's the story of the hairy toe. Now, I realise I've probably finished slightly sooner than I should have done, so I'm going to tell you my shortest story. I sometimes visit Devon, and there is a place there on the coast called Budleigh Salterton. It's a real name. It's a real place. Check it out. Beautiful place. And I was there several years ago, and there had been a real storm at sea overnight, a huge, huge, huge storm like we get in the British Isles sometimes. And sometimes it throws up the animals from the sea on the beach, and some can get back and some can't, sadly. And this time, some of you might remember this, it threw up hundreds and probably thousands of starfish. You look this way and that way, and there were just starfish so far up the beach, they couldn't get back into the sea. The sea had gone out and they couldn't get back. And I saw this with my own eyes. And I saw a young girl of about 8 years of age, and she was walking along looking at all the starfish. Most of them were dead. And then she noticed one was just twitching a little bit. And she bent down and she picked up that starfish. And she walked down to the edge of the sea. And she gently put that starfish into the sea, and off it went. There were two fishermen walking past her, and they saw this. And they called out to her, "Young dear, you're wasting your time." And she turned to the two fishermen. She looked them in the eye, and she said, "That starfish didn't think so." And that's my shortest story. People often say of us storytellers, "Is your story true?" And we say you might find some of your truth, or indeed some truth, in the stories that we tell you. So what you've experienced, I'm nearly up for time, what you've experienced just very briefly is one of the oldest traditions. It goes back hundreds and thousands of years. We told each other stories. We would sit around fires, we would sing, we would tell stories, we'd probably play a little bit of music eventually, but this is what we did. And look at this time that we're having now. We're having a chance to gather together where we can, when we can, safely, of course, if we live with our family members, or in a virtual world like this. Hundreds, thousands of us can gather together and share stories and songs, and you're going to get a lot more songs today, and it's going to be grand, I know it is. So I've been Shane Ibbs, storyteller. Check me out on Facebook, and thank you very much for listening and all your kind comments that I see floating up as I'm chatting to you. It's very nice of you. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. The other Lynn, there's Lynn's that I know spelt differently. And thank you very much, Nick, for inviting me along. And I'm going to sign out, and hopefully that's fine for now. Thank you very much. Thank you.